You would have got my message about super bearish the Aussie on Thursday. I don't know if you managed to say it in the show.
No, I didn't, mate. I didn't get that message.
Oh, okay.
I got the happy anniversary. Oh yes, no, I did. I did. I didn't manage to say it.
No, beat me
Anyway,
to it.
we are live. So welcome everyone. Welcome to trading, learn to trade live and free
Thanks,
with
mate.
Ash and
Good to
Jeff.
be here.
Yeah. So we've just been having a little chat off air, and you were talking about the Aussie. I don't know whether that's shaping up now, or whether you want to quickly go through the FTSE. FTSE's at
Um, Mate, go through the footsie, but yeah, I eagle eyes on the Aussie
okay.
bears. So
Well, I mean, it's probably quite similar in some respects to the mark. The FTSE 100 is an interesting one because there is opportunities, as we can see here, that the market has come up, hasn't quite touched this trend line. Now, I will be looking for this point to be touched on the weekly pivot, and then looking for some downside from here. Um, there is an inverted head and shoulders. There's a gap down here. So what I wouldn't mind seeing if it comes down and closes the gap, maybe go long into this area first and then look for the short because it might actually get through that level. You know, that's not the only decent level to trade short from. It might even be a little bit shallow. So pushing down first, closing the gap might trigger me into a long. I think the market has been buoyed by the fact that the Chinese are talking about stimulus to make sure that the market doesn't collapse. The coronavirus obviously is still an
mm,
issue, and I still think that the shorts will be on, but just maybe not at this low level down here. So I may not even look at the weekly pivot. You can see that there's definite resistance here. There's a trend line along here. There's this high, which would create, if you like, some sort of neckline, and there's the weekly pivot. So, looking around about 20 pips, looks like 30 pips above where we are now, is definitely the short area. But what I would prefer to see first is ease back, trade long, get into this area, check it out. If not, then I'd like to see it pop through and maybe even all the way up to the monthly pivot before looking for a short. Of course, that will be a different prospect because of the chance that we then close above the trend line and then go long from there. But the overall picture has to be still for a short right now. But I think the short term will be to look for the long. Actually, when you see this, this is probably the trend line I'm more interested in. So I wouldn't mind seeing the market ease up today, get up to that monthly pivot, and then kick down. Now the monthly pivot is currently sitting around about 90 pips away from where we currently are. So I might let it go this morning, mate. Just let it go, let it ease up. The chances are it will ease down a little bit from this point, but I don't think that's the big short. I think the big short's from up here. So I might wait for this area to give way and then look for a
sounds like
short
a
here.
good name for a movie, mate.
Quite catchy, isn't it?
Yeah, I can go with that.
Yeah. Um, okay. Well, let's talk about the Aussie because I'm not going to do anything early doors because the price isn't in the right point. I'm either going to trade from here, maybe here, but unlikely, but definitely here. So let's have a quick chat about the Aussie and then we'll come back to the FTSE to see how things develop this morning.
All right, but we'll go via the pound and we'll
Great.
place the breakout trade. And just now we've closed the bar. I've just placed the short and the short order. Oh, hang on, screen. We need the screen, don't we?
Oh, sorry, mate. Yeah, market's just opened up. You can see that it's going to attempt to get to that weekly pivot initially. Attempt, I should. Must reiterate.
Okay, so the short for the pound is, and I would never take this in 100 years. I've got to tell you, I wouldn't take the short in a fit. But here we go. The entry level will be 131.30 for the short. Stop loss on that will be 131.72, and vice versa. The long entry, I've already placed the short, so I'll place the long as well. And again, this one is half risk because of the very poor performance for this on a Monday. But I'd have to say there's very poor performances in the last 3 weeks as well. So And again, we're in beta mode, guys, so we've got to take that into consideration as well. 31.72, I think I said, for the long, and 30 for the short. Was that right? Yep, 31.30 is the stop loss for the long. Sorry. Okay, so there we go. Again, OCO. If that was a little bit lower, I'd consider taking that trade, but there's no way I'd take that trade outside of this strategy. No way in the world. And there's the entry and stop loss. That's not too bad where it is. All right, so Aussie. Why am I talking about the Aussie? Well, throw coronavirus in the mix, of course, and I think that's probably just the straw that broke the camel's back at the end of the day. But the Aussie is under extreme pressure, in my humble opinion, not least because of bushfires and droughts. And we've got an interest rate decision tomorrow that looks, for all intents and purposes, as though it will stay at 0.75 of 1%. But there are little murmurs around the place that they may cut again. That may not be this month, but we'll have a look at the statement, see what that says. If that's bearish in any way, shape, or form, then wow, the base that the Aussie has formed over the last year or so is under extreme pressure, and that base is very, very obvious and clear, and that's where price stopped pretty much on a sixpence or a dime on Friday. Was it Friday where it stopped? Yes, it was. So we're very much at that support level, and that's why this is really tricky at the moment, because you'd have to be expecting, from a technical point of view alone, a bounce here. Well, we've really already had one. So that really isn't that much of a concern for me. Yes, it's a strong level. It's going to take some effort to get through here. There's no question about that. But I don't think that that anything really, well, anything that's on the table at the moment, let me put it that way, can be construed in any way, shape, or form as positive for the Aussie dollar in fundamental terms. I just don't see any way that this can turn around, to be fair. That said, we are at a support level, and there will be people who want to get out of these positions. I'm one. I was in Aussie yen. This is Aussie yen I'm talking about. I traded Aussie yen and Aussie Swiss. I traded on Friday, Ash.
You did? Oh, yeah. And good, was it?
Yeah, well, both Aussie yen and Aussie Swiss, we traded short, and I trailed, so on the smaller time frames. So I pretty much got the lot of that move and the lot of this move as well.
I really like Friday trading. I have to say, it's maybe my favourite day. It depends when the Friday happens. Actually, I think the last Friday of the month is usually pretty good.
Yeah, it was interesting. Put up a couple of good candles. This one was the one I traded here. As you can see, I got in underneath that candle and a very small stop loss. So we got a good reward out of that one.
Nice.
And Aussie yen was pretty much the same. I love trading dojis. The doji was a bit big, but based on what I saw in Aussie Swissy and the fact that I was extremely bearish, I'm very late into this move. Got to say, I've been trying to get short for ages, but at least we got something out of it. The good part is we did get out of it, and we're now presented with another. Well, perhaps we're going to be presented with another opportunity to get back in. But there's the base that I really was talking about on Aussie US dollar. And as you can see, we pierced through the first of those, if you like, which is this 71 level, I think, roughly, or 70 and a half, 0.705-ish, something like that. But when we did break that, we came back, put in a new low, and now we've retested that level, which took the longest time to break. That's key for me, I think. And yes, we're at the bottom of a range here again, but I think this is in strife. I think the Aussie's got a lot of problems right now. As I said, not least of which is bushfires, which is really knocking the tourism industry about, for instance. It's reducing our ability to produce uh, quality stock, quality produce, all of those things. You know, it's not just in a pocket around Australia. It's really widespread. So you know, our export capabilities at the moment have to be at an all-time low. Throw in the coronavirus, which
Yeah.
is really, really, you know, just the icing on the cake as far as disastrous circumstances are concerned, because you know our major trading partner is China.
Yeah.
And
I mean, have you seen the price of copper?
no, I haven't, mate.
Oh, astonishing looking chart. After you've done, I'll show you the price of copper. It's an astonishing looking chart.
Oh,
It's
okay.
pretty ugly, ugly looking,
Plummeted.
ugly reading, mate.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's case in point. I don't know what coal's like, but
Mm.
you know they're really our major export commodities, and you know throw in beef, throw in all sorts of things, wool. It's just a very, very bad picture from an economic point of view. And then tomorrow, if, as I say, if the RBA statement's in any way dovish, uh, I can't see this even surviving these lows of global financial crisis. You know, this is in real trouble, and I definitely see 65 by the end of this week, if not tomorrow. I think this can fall very quickly. So I'm looking to trade anything, and the ones that I chose on Friday, apart from the fact that they were setting up, were what I consider to be the risk, pardon me, risk off currencies, the yen and the Swissy. So I just thought that they were no brainers, frankly, and that's why we took those trades. In terms of getting in now, I'm willing to get back in as soon as I possibly can, and if I get something like that on the 4 hour bar, I'd have to consider it. I don't like low test bar followed by high test bar. It's not kind of my thing. But if I'm willing to wait till tomorrow to see if we get a little bit of more out of this, you know, maybe even back to the weekly pivot, I'm not sure I'm willing to wait for that. Technically, you've got to be thinking, wow, this is so oversold. You've got to hang around here and just wait for the decent retracement. And normally, I'd be saying that would be my counsel for sure. You can't go short here. You can't go short here. You know, I've said it that many times.
Mm.
But I'm just of the opinion that this is in so much trouble that
Looking at your looking at
any
your
rally.
uh,
Yep.
um, the website you use as the currency
Yep.
strength indicator, is the
Hmm.
Aussie the weakest?
At the moment, I haven't looked at it today, but
I
let me go there.
do you know what? Because it's an interesting it's an interesting currency, isn't it? Because when we think about the other currencies that we have, you know, if we think about the big six, the Aussie is the most exposed to China. So when the
Yep.
coronavirus hit, then it seems fairly logical to me that the Aussie
Obvious. Yeah.
would be, yeah, the one that's going to weaken, the one that's most likely to weaken should be the Australian dollar. So, and what's fascinating about that is if it is the case that it is the weakest and it is the link to the coronavirus, then it is the obvious one to trade in the opposite direction if and when they find some sort of vaccination or some other part of the story develops so the coronavirus doesn't become such an issue in worldwide markets. It would make it the obvious choice to trade it long.
Okay, I'll bring this up for you because it will be quite interesting to give you a an overview of exactly how this has changed. Because what you've got is, and that of course is Forex Factory. But if I go to finviz.com, this will be a very interesting story because guess what the strongest currency today is against the US dollar, Ash?
Guessing that. Okay. It won't be the yen.
No, it won't be the yen.
The euro.
No,
Just gonna have to go through them. The pound.
no.
You're not going to tell me the
What's the,
Aussie.
yes, I am.
Oh,
There it
really?
is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So and the reason is, of course, they've gone into retracement after the big falls.
Yeah.
So the Aussie and the Kiwi are the only two that are outperforming the dollar at the moment,
Right.
and the pound also retracing after its big rally is coming back. But
Yeah.
that will change very, very quickly if I go from today to the month, and you'll
Which is
see
the
the
key.
Aussie go to you'll see the Aussie go to here, or sorry, not the month, yeah, the month. You'll see the both of them go from reverse to here.
Yeah, I've got. We've still got the picture of the Aussie Swiss at the minute.
Oh, okay, we've got to change. Sorry, guys. I forget you've got to do funny things to here. New share, and there we go. So I'll go back to those charts so you can see them. If you could just let me know, mate, when it comes up, because I'm not monitoring off air.
Yeah, we got it. Finviz. Yeah.
Okay, so you got Finviz, and there's the strongest two currencies against the dollar today on the daily comparative. But if I switch to the month, and I don't mean the month of February, this is over a month, right? A month of trading. So we're talking basically 1st of January to the 1st of February. And if I switch to that chart, you can see very, very quickly that the Aussie and the Kiwi, which were here and here today, are there and there over a longer time frame. Go to the quarterly, nothing will change.
I mean, do you know what? That is I think that particular statistic that you've got up there, that this is the quarterly, even that, actually not so interesting, but the previous one, the months one, was the interesting one.
The month, yeah.
Yeah, because if we think about the news that we knew, the news flow that we were aware of, it was really, very much dominated by coronavirus, and we saw gold strengthen quite significantly, and it kind of makes, again, logical sense that the Swissy should be sat at the top of the pile. Also in there, the yen, which should be near the top of the pile, which I know it's about midway, but it's in the positive side of the pile. The dollar is bound to...
You can see the shift, can't you?
Yes, you can. The dollar's bound to get some to find some strength, because it is also a safe haven currency to a lesser or greater degree. Comparatively so, when we think about the other currencies, the dollar would be something that people would gravitate towards. And then obviously the other one, the obvious one, is the pound. If I don't think we'd much evidence to sort of say what drives the market, can actually be fairly obvious. With the pound, we were all expecting an interest rate cut, and also we had Brexit Day last week as well. So the pound, being where it is, it could have been that particular one could have been right at the other end of the spectrum if things had been slightly different for those interest rate cuts and Brexit and everything else. So interesting that the pound is up there, actually, but I do think also telling that the Swissy sits at the top, the Aussie sits at the bottom, when we think of risk on, risk off, and how the Swissy will lead the charge in this particular instance, but probably because of gold, as I said. The fact that it has such a strong relationship with gold, the fact that the Swissy sits at the top is no great surprise. So if that is the unfolding story, to hear some positivity about this coronavirus will probably flip those two round, fairly significantly. I don't know whether the Swiss will end up right at the bottom, but depending on what kind of rally it's had off the back of the virus, then it'll probably get shoved down fairly fast, and the Aussie will potentially go in completely opposite direction. So two very interesting currencies, I think, that we got right there, mate.
Oh yeah, look, absolutely, and that's why I was focused on them. And as I say, today that's completely flipped on its ear. Not so much that the Swissy's gone to the bottom, but and that really does show me relative strength that the Swissy, because it hasn't moved down to the bottom of the chart on retracement, and this is the comparative that I'm getting to. The Aussie is retracing. Don't read into this that just because of today, and we've only just opened the London session, right? Don't think that you can just jump on board the Aussie long here because it's now the strongest currency against the dollar today. Really, what that's telling us is, if we look at that and compare it to the month, what it's telling us is that there's a retracement on at the moment, and that's all it's telling us. It's not telling us that this is going to continue. So, don't be fooled by that. These things will switch and come together. And I think that's the whole point. The whole point is that the strongest currency versus the weakest currency over time, longer the stronger, don't forget, right, will work. But if you try and measure that day to day, you could be in very, very serious trouble if you're trying to do that. But there's the quarter that we're looking at, Aussie Swissy. There's the month that we're looking at. Pardon me, or we're just about to look at the month, and it's the same, Aussie Swissy. That's the longer term that we're looking at. We're looking at a stronger, by far, currency differential between the Swissy and the Aussie. But then you look at today, going back to that, that's just reflecting that there's a retracement on the cards. That's all that's doing. So I'm still an absolute bear, Aussie Swissy, absolute bear. So I'm really just looking for an opportunity to get short again. But it's interesting what you say, Ash, and I'm not sure how we know from minute to minute or day to day how the coronavirus is progressing, if that's the right word. So it's very, very difficult for me to say, okay, now is the time to wait until we get a technical signal.
Yeah.
That's always going to be the case anyway.
Yeah.
And is this technical signal strong enough, or do I need to wait till we get back to here? And the answer is I have to wait till we get back to here.
Yeah, and it is, and I think this is the key with trading a reversal, if you like, which is what we'll all be doing if we start trading the Aussie long, the FTSE long, the S&P long, all those markets. The key to trading that reversal is to I shouldn't say the key. The challenge of trading the reversal is to understand whether it's actually reversing, or is it what's known in the market as a dead cat bounce, which is effectively a false signal in the opposite direction. So the market can bounce to the upside in a downtrend, and it's seeming that that is the reversal that we've been waiting for. Then all of a sudden it just starts to plummet to the downside again, which is what I am expecting to happen. I mean, we've had a situation, I think, in 2008 when people started to get back into Chinese stocks, I think it was, or certainly into other stocks, only to find out that it didn't bottom out for another 20% lower. So you've got to be very careful trying to pick out a reversal, and much better just at this particular stage. I think we continue in the same direction, mate. I think there's still some flushing out to do here, and I think there's a possibility that we could be on the low. But I think the great possibility with that is, if we are, then we're likely to get a double bottom rather than it give us a V-shaped recovery. I think the story is far too deep to give us just a V-shaped recovery at these lows down here. So I think at minimum we get back and test what we've seen once already.
Yes, I agree. From a where would I like to be trading this to point of view, this is Aussie yen. I can't see this not going to 71. I just can't see it not going there. But timing your entry is very, very crucial. So the point that you're talking about, Ash, is probably for this pair. Let me bring that down. Is probably in that vicinity, one would have thought. So that's probably where you're looking to enter short again, I would have thought, from a technical point of view. But will it allow us, the weight of fundamentals against it is very, very strong. So I just doubt that we're going to get the opportunity to get back to here. And that's where it becomes tricky as a trader to say, well, okay, and I said it a couple of minutes ago, do I wait for the technical setup and play the way I should play the game, or do I force my way back in here? And that's the question that we've got. The answer that I'll give you is this. I think if price gets back to this level, then we're down to the next support level and probably the one after that. That's my 2 cents worth. And for that reason, I'm probably willing to place a short underneath here. and I would, it's so rare that I would do something like that without the right retracement. It's not funny, and for that reason, I would have to trade that at extremely small risk. It's kind of in the FOMO bracket. It really is in the FOMO bracket, I suppose. Not only kinda, it is, but because I don't want to miss out on this. I really don't. I see it as a fait accompli. Actually, I don't see how it can't happen. What I don't see clearly is how they can rally back to here. That's what I don't see clearly, and that's a bit of a conundrum. It really is. So, well, I guess watch this space. But anything you take from here short is way high risk, in my humble opinion. I'll put it that way.
Mm.
But it is a hard thing. Yeah, it really is, because, and I guess I've said this 100 times as well. The more obvious it is, the less likely it is to happen, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a crazy thing to say, but
That's
kind of the way I work.
It's a fascinating aspect of trading, isn't it? That actually you do have to be contrarian, and the key to success really is being looking to trade in the opposite direction to the rest of the market and being right. And it's such a challenge, because obviously we all learn that we take certain signals because those certain signals have high probabilities. But when it comes down to it, there's certainly something to be said to say that the higher the probability, because of the way that the chart looks, the lower the probability it's likely to work out.
Yep. I guess the question that I try to ask myself all the time is, what are the big guys doing here?
Yeah.
What's on their minds right now? What's going to drive them next? And the obvious answer is always going to be the same. Well, for me, it's always going to be the same. They're going to get the best price they possibly can.
Yes.
And that comes to the point we've just been trying to make. That price isn't here. That price is here, or in here somewhere. That's why it's really difficult, because FOMO does kick in, and you think, but it's not outright FOMO that wants to get me into here. It's the belief that this is going here, and how do I get in if I miss it? That is, and I guess that is FOMO. Why am I trying to deny it? It's FOMO.
Yeah.
So I'm going to watch it, and I'm not going to take the obvious path. I am going to wait until we get the right retracement, and if it goes, it goes. I've already made money out of it, so I'm not going to be that distraught if it just goes on its merry way. But yeah, if I see the right circumstances, anything that's got Aussie in it, I'm going against the Aussie, that's for sure.
Okay, mate, that sounds good. Well, I don't really have too much today. We've placed the pound trade, haven't we?
We have no trigger yet, and I'm really hope that we don't get triggered in right here, right now. That's an awful place to get in the market, really is.
Yes, well, we have, just to kind of add some meat to the picture today as well, and another reason I think it's worth waiting, we have a slew of data. It's only yellow folder data. I'll just take the screen here, mate, just so we can have a look through this stuff. We have a slew of data from Europe this morning. By the way, any American football fans out there? The Super Bowl yesterday was absolutely brilliant. Best I'd seen, mate. That's the best Super Bowl that I think I've ever watched.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
I think so.
Okay. And because you would have watched a few?
I've watched probably every single one in the last decade at least. But even and then I wasn't watching it for a bit. But before that I was watching it when I was first getting into American.
Do you go back, and I know the 49ers is one of your teams.
Yeah.
Do you go back to Joe Montana?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
I used to watch NFL in those days.
Yes, that's when it kind of started for me, the kind of Joe Montana, Dan Marino era.
Yeah, okay.
And I went right through those guys. That was probably the first awareness that I had of American football. That was when it was brought to the UK. So Joe Montana, and then and then it was about the Bears, the Chicago Bears, and it was about the Giants, and the Cowboys, and you know, and then it got to an era which I kind of lost touch with it a little bit. But I've been really into it the last maybe the last 15 years or so. I've been really into American football again, but because it's my favourite sport. I absolutely
Yeah,
love
you
it.
do like it, don't you?
Yeah, and it's, you know, I was talking to a friend at the pub, and the only reason I'm digressing right now is that there's not really a lot to do trading wise. We will talk about these numbers in a second, and we got plenty of time. I was talking to a friend about it, and we were talking about soccer, if you like, just for the want of the other term, but what we would call football over here, the Premier League. And I was saying that I think it's got spoilt by VAR. I don't really like it, you know, because and it doesn't work with a game like football, because American football is just basically a series of set plays. So to have a camera angles in between each set play makes complete sense, you know.
Yep.
But and tennis, you know, there's natural breaks at the end of each point. There's these games that are out there that work with VAR, and to have you know, a Hawkeye style of camera angles going on. But with the Premier League football, it doesn't work because it's free flowing, and it takes away the momentum. And that's the problem with it, you know. That's why I don't think it's been a positive addition to football when they've introduced VAR. I think they were much better off having whatever it is inside the ball that allows them to see whether it's a goal or not, you know, because that should be absolute. But all the other decisions, let the refs get it wrong every now and again. You know, I don't think football should. I don't think they have to make every single game absolute. I think they can make some games just down to interpretation. So I think it's spoiled the game personally. I watched the game the weekend, but you know, I support Tottenham. Well, not support Tottenham. I follow Tottenham, and Tottenham were playing Man City on the weekend. And there was a moment of play. It must have gone on for at least 60 seconds to 2 minutes, where they were going back to review a penalty decision, but the ball hadn't gone out of play, so they were playing it through, and then they went back, made the decision, and it was a pen. And I just thought, you know, this is the problem with it. This is ridiculous. That's why I'm not enjoying VAR. How can you have that much play go past and then bring it back? What if somebody got injured, you know, at that particular point?
There's a lot of things can happen, and the other, yes, the momentum swings and changes, and if you pull the game up for 1 minute, 2 minutes, or whatever it is, the defending team can, you know, get into formation, whereas otherwise they may not be, etc., etc.
Yeah,
it does change the dynamics.
So I don't like it for that. But just back to the game last night. Yeah, it was the best because it was so close. The 49ers, who I do follow, you know, if there was a team I was going to pick to you know, for the team that I'd say is my favourite, purely because it's my favourite part of America, it would be the San Francisco 49ers. But I kind of wanted the Kansas City Chiefs to win because they are the most entertaining. And every year, when it comes down to it, I gravitate towards the team that I like watching the most. So I want, you know, a few years ago it was the Colts with Peyton Manning, and this era right now it's the Kansas City Chiefs, because they've got this guy Patrick Mahomes, which does astonishing things as a quarterback. So I kind of wanted him to win, and they were down 20-10 going into the last quarter, and the last 3 games they fought back from pretty big deficits. And no team has done that before. So I love their spirit, and I love their tenacity, and I love the fact they've got this guy who's got the X factor when it comes down to how he plays the game, that has got the ability to bring his team back. And he did it again last night. And they ended up being triumphant over the San Francisco 49ers. You know what? And it was, I was watching the whole game, but when it comes down to the score, 20-31, which I think of what I said. So they effectively scored 3 touchdowns without reply in the final quarter, and ended up winning the game on that. So there you go. I'm having to Google it because I can't remember. You know, it was kind of late, so I couldn't remember the score. But I just remember the excitement.
Not much sleep for you, mate, last night.
No sleep at all, pretty much. I think I went to bed about 3:30 and I was up at 7:30. So I was a bit jaded this morning when I opened up the charts, and I was thinking, should I trade? And I may not. You know, it's, unfortunately for me, this is what's been going on with the market for the last Let me bring this into a cleaner chart. This is what's been going on with the market for the last half an hour. Nice and quiet. So I don't really have to do anything really right now. There might be a little short on here, but wouldn't take that. Not where I want to trade at all. So fortunately for me, the market hasn't asked me to get in. So I'm not under any pressure to trade right now, mate, which is good.
Yep.
Anyway, so what I was going to mention was that we have important numbers out of Europe. So we got the manufacturing PMI out of Switzerland, which has just been released. So let's just double check that. Now, these are really important numbers if we're going to be looking at any recession. Europe manufacturing PMI, Spanish manufacturing PMI, still under the 50% mark. I suppose a little bit of a positive. Manufacturing PMI out of Switzerland, look at that. Now, interesting to start looking at the Swissy this morning after its huge move to the upside after seeing manufacturing PMI. Huge drop, mate. Look at that. That is hideous. So showing some weakness out there. Italian manufacturing PMIs. Yep. Yes, a retraction territory and potentially recession territory as well. Yep. French and German PMIs all due out in the next 25 minutes. The big number, of course, will be the final manufacturing PMI from Europe. Then we get the UK's reading at 9:30, which is probably the green light to start going with trades in the pound, the euro, and the FTSE 100 and the other European stocks. Until this point, I'm not sure we're going to get too much in the way of trading opportunities, which is the other reason I'm quite happy to sit on the sidelines. Now, later we do get ISM manufacturing from the US, which is already under 50. So, we want to see a pickup in that particular number. This may well drag the pound back down again. The euro will be interesting as well. As I said before, Europe has not been growing. When we see these numbers here, let's just bring up the final manufacturing PMI for Europe generally, and look what's been going on. Down, really since the turn of the year 2019. So for the last year, we've been in a slump. So if we start focusing back on figures again, then that doesn't really bode too well for something like the euro, which we'll have a quick look at.
Yeah, I'm a bear of the euro.
Yeah, which are these numbers will be an interesting development to see what happens here. Just on a daily chart, obviously you wouldn't be trading the euro right now, but I wonder whether if those numbers come out to be fairly weak, we actually do see now they're yellow folders, so it's not likely to make a turn of trend. But what it could do is to provide some retracement, and if that does retrace down again, I suspect better to wait for this number if you're looking at a long euro at all. But otherwise, let's look at the numbers and see if it's able to kind of get up to that level, maybe even the monthly pivot before the data is released, and then start to ease to the downside into the US data release.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's not really too much going on, mate, in that respect either. So small bits of data release, but still quite key, depending on how those numbers come out. If they end up being fairly muted and arbitrary, nothing to report here. But remember, coronavirus, the reason that the coronavirus has caused the sell-off that it has caused is because everybody's anticipating. Look at these manufacturing number PMIs out of China. Pretty decent, really. Pretty decent hold right now. Looks like even a potential turnaround in those numbers, because they were a little bit muted really at the in last year. They were a little bit muted. They have started to pick up a little bit in activity. But these numbers are going to be really key. Has the coronavirus genuinely affected the worldwide economy? And you have to say that it must have done, because so many business trips must have been cancelled during the period where, vaccinations and locking down cities and China, travel in and out of China.
Country, you can't. Nobody from China can even get into Australia unless they're Australian. Right.
No, and the thing is, China makes up 17% of the worldwide global GDP. So when we're thinking about that is it's a main player. You can't lock down 17% of an economy, of the worldwide economy, and it not to have an effect. Now, I don't know when those numbers will start filtering through. I would have thought in the next quarter. but that doesn't really bode too well. And I wonder whether, if we are waiting for the next quarter before those numbers really start to show some weakness, people trade into it and then away from it. I'll be looking at the FTSE 100 with a little bit more with a little bit more of a bullish eye in around about 2 weeks' time, because seasonally it tends to pick up mid-February. So I'd be quite happy to be looking at the longs, but actually I'd still be looking at the longs for the potential of the market in April to then look for a short again, because I just don't see how those numbers are going to come out to be that positive.
I don't either. I mean, that's what I don't get. How, from a economic or fundamental point of view, how these things can recover.
Yeah.
Don't see it. Just not there. But there's always something that flips us on our heads and goes, "What the bloody hell just happened?"
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Which the coronavirus, I think, did in the first place.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's me really, mate. I don't think there's too much else. As I always say, if anybody else has got anything they want us to look at, or you've got any other opinions about things that are going on right now, then do share. But otherwise, I'm ready to wrap up.
Just a couple of things from me, mate. I'll go and take a look at dollar yen, which we're still in. And
that was a great trade, by the way, mate.
Yeah, looking good.
Yeah, really good patience on that one.
Going to be hanging on to that for a fair while, I believe, but anything can happen, as we've just said. But I do like the fact that we're now going to see a clear indication as to what's going to happen next with this line here, and this is the weekly chart, right? So the week has started off with a bit of a bounce off the bottom of that range and the channel, as you would expect. I don't know that that's sustainable, and I'm quite hopeful it's not. I have taken profit. We took our first profit when we hit the bottom of this range, and I did call that for you guys. How long have we been in this now? 2 weeks? We got in the week before last, that's right. Okay, so getting into the 2-week zone. This is now the key level, of course, where we are exactly where we are. And that's why we've taken profit here, because we anticipated that there would be some form of support. If this level goes, then there's another opportunity to scale into this again, which I will do, because I see this as a potential 105 area. So, and we said this was our target at the time. We were looking at about was it 9 to 1? I can't remember now. I think that's what I was calling it. No, 5 to 1 trade. That's right. But we have taken profit here now, so that reduces the reward, of course. But there's no more profit for me to take now until here. I think this is the level that I'm looking for. I'll probably take it out at 105, but yeah, that's all looking fairly promising at the moment. We shall see how that pans out, of course. Aussie yen, Aussie Swissy, Aussie I've already spoken about. So I'm just going to wait on those. I'm not going to take the, let's say, tempting route. I'm not going to take tempting, although if I see something that's completely off the charts here, like this will be, I would have to trade underneath this. If I get a retest of this trade line now, hang on, I've got a cough. I think on a 30-minute basis, I would nearly have to take that trade. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that we get a double bottom here. That is definitely on the card. So I'd be willing to take that trade, dependent on the size of the candle, of course. I don't want to trade a 5-pip candle. What will we have? No, that'd be fine. Even if we came back to the daily pivot, I'd still take that trade, taking profit here. It'd still be 1 to 1 down to here. More than happy with that. That's get 50% off the table at that level. Move your stops 50% to the good, so you can only win on that trade if that were the case. So I'll be looking at that, absolutely. Am I expecting it to go short beyond that level? Probably not today. But if it does, happy days, we're in. And I think that's a reasonably, let's call it safe, if there's such a thing. I think it's a relatively probable chance that that will happen. So I'll take that opportunity if it's there. I won't take a double whammy on it. So if it were to be the case on Aussie Swissy, I think I'd just trade the Aussie yen because the Aussie yen looks to be a better trade. The Aussie itself, on the 30-minute charts, it's very similar to Aussie yen, but there is a marked difference here, and I'll point that out to you. Double bottom, triple bottom, if you like, potential higher low. We've already had a higher high. If you go back to Aussie yen, no double bottom. We've actually got a new low here. And yes, it's potentially a higher low. We have had a higher high, but I suppose we do have a reversal. There it is there. It's the bullish engulfing bar. So there is a potential for this to be a signal for a long as well. But the contention that I would put here is that if they're going long, they'll probably continue to go long here, and that will become a low. And if that's the case, I won't be taken into the trade and I shouldn't get stopped. So Aussie yen, it would be not Aussie Swissy or Aussie dollar. I did say I was a bear the euro. Two ways I could trade this. One, if we got to the monthly pivot and put in, no, I'd have to see more than a reversal bar. So let me point out how I would trade that. I'd be looking at that line there. Okay, what I'd like to see here right now is this candle in the next 18 minutes. Sorry, I'm on a 4-hour chart. In the next 1 hour and a quarter, if that were to come down and maybe even close on or below the weekly pivot, then the next bar was to be bullish and decisive, and at least retest the bottom of that trade line that I've just put on the chart. That would instigate a short order underneath the retrace bar, and stop loss probably needs to go up here above the monthly pivot by 5 or 10 pips, something like that. So that would definitely be on the cards for me. It doesn't have to go to the weekly pivot, but I'd much prefer it did, because to take profit before the weekly pivot is absolutely essential, and daily pivot same. So if you're on a 30-minute chart, you've got to be taking profit before an untested daily pivot, in my humble opinion, in particular on the euro. And the reason I say that is I know that the numbers on the euro allow us about 22% chance to trade away from an untested daily pivot, not numbers that I like to trade. So that would be a must for me. Cable, looks like we're in the trade. So we need to switch to a 15-minute chart here. And we are in the trade, and I don't want to be in a short here, Ash, but
yeah,
the methodology is that we have to take what's there. So
you have to take what's there. Do you know, it'd be interesting, won't it, mate? Because, you know, when it comes down to it, it's going to be a 45-minute story with cable. If the cable numbers are bad, if the pound numbers are, the UK numbers are bad, then cable's going to further weaken, I would suggest, from this particular point.
Yep. Okay, we're going to cancel the buy order. I'll do that in just a tick. Was there something else I wanted to look at? I don't believe so. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, pound yen. Pound yen was interesting. And I think you've got to wait for the news here. But, you know, from this chart's point of view, you've got to be thinking short here for the short term. Sorry, you don't have to be thinking anything. I have to be thinking short here for the short term. So I think if we got this candle to close here, and I'm on a 4-hour chart again, and retest the weekly pivot and or the daily pivot and or the monthly pivot, because they're all sandwiched together here, I think I would have to take it short, but only down to this area here, because anything can happen. And, you know, as we've said, pound, for all intents and purposes, now that we are, well, should I call it post-Brexit? I suppose we can call it post-Brexit, although there's still a lot of toing and froing to be done, I suppose, in the next 10 months or so. I think we're out of the really crunch zone for the pound, and I see it being positive for that currency for the medium term, actually.
Yeah, do you know, it's really going to be about what kind of deal they get from here on in now.
And will we know that in near term? I don't think so. You know,
Probably not. It's going to be another one of those, 11 months of he said, she said kind of thing. I think,
Yeah.
Boris Johnson wants this, a pretty comprehensive trade deal with the EU, and maybe he gets it. Do you know? I watched a really interesting program on the European Union about a week ago, and the history that the UK has with the EU. And I have to say, after watching it, it kind of changed my view on being in the EU, which is fairly drastic for me. I still think it will affect us negatively economically, but I wonder whether actually it is right for the UK to be part of that particular club. I think it's got a little bit out of hand. It was 30 countries out in it, and I'm not sure whether it is right for us. So I'm hoping that they can get a decent deal somewhere along the line now.
I've got a funny feeling that people are going to be asking that question for some time to come, Ash.
Whether it was the right thing. Yeah,
yes.
I think it's going to be one of those that economically I can't see how it can be good for the UK to be outside of a trading bloc, which is effectively what it is. But I think when it comes down to in the independent side of it, I can see the benefit of not being part of something that you pretty much have no control over, and it really is run by France and Germany. And you can almost omit France from that as well. It's that's the EU is just like an extension of Germany's dominance in Europe, and the UK, as we know, has never really been like that closely aligned with Germany. I don't think it would be a nation that we have quite as much.
They've got a little bit of history, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have quite as much in common with those guys as some of the other countries, and that's no slight on Germany or Germans, because I think they are amazing people, and their country is completely different, and there's no suggestion that we're back to the time that saw 2 world wars, in the slightest.
1940s.
But I do think that we are culturally just different from Europe, because we're not part of the landmass. The fact that we're an island, it just changes things a little bit, and I think you'd probably be able to appreciate it in the way, if I put it in terms of Tasmania, probably feels quite different to the rest of Australia.
Definitely, absolutely, yeah.
And I kind of see it a little bit like that, which is why now I can see why the likes of Barcelona want their own independence, and dare I say Scotland as well. It's a difficult circle to square in a way, because you really want integration with nations, but I don't necessarily think that has to mean that you integrate to the point where you almost become part of the same country.
I wonder, is that, and I'm going back to what you just said about Tasmania right now.
Yeah.
I wonder, has that got anything to do with, I'm not going to use climate change, but what I am going to use is awareness of the planet.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this breakaway mentality got anything to do with that. Certainly in Tasmania's case, it has.
Right.
Because we are an island, we can isolate lots of things like viruses, like disease in plants, like pests and pestilence and all that sort of bad stuff. Let's put it bluntly, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know, but from where I sit, that's certainly the case. And that's why I'm here. It's why I'm where I live.
Yeah.
Because we are a relatively clean place, and we don't have a lot of pests. We don't have a lot of virus threats. I suppose our biosecurity is fairly strict. We've got very clean air here.
Yeah, I do think that has got something to do with it.
Maybe that's something.
I think it is, mate, because when you think about it, you made the choice to move there for those reasons. So you go and live in a specific country for a specific reason. It's not just kind of like, you even go and live in a certain area in a country for a certain reason. So it shows that each area is unique and has its own characteristics, and it draws certain people to those places. And as I say, after watching this, I was just thinking, well, Europe haven't really treated the UK that well in the time that it's been part of the club. So I kind of get it. from here on in, I kind of get it.
Well, mate, I don't think we're going to solve the problem right here, right now, but it's always worth having a little pontification over.
Absolutely right. Just incidentally, if the FTSE 100 pops up to the 7270 on the futures, which will be 73. Looks like it's going to be around about 73.40-ish, 73.38, 73.40 on the UK cash. I'm going to be taking that as a short. I am going to get into this one short. I think that I think it's time to kind of like give that one a first run and see if there's a little short on offer there.
Okay, Aussie Swissy shaping up for a short. We've got 8 minutes left. If this bar were to close as it is now, I would place a short underneath it, and I would be taking profit. I'd actually take profit before that low. I'd take profit if I can put this line on the chart, it'll let me. I would take profit right there at 72.47. So the trade will look like this. It will look like an entry at 72.59. And my stop loss would be at 72.88. So 29 pips of risk. I would be taking profit, as I said, 59, did I say? Yep. So 29 pips of risk. I'll be taking profit at 12 pips. So a little bit less than 0.5 to 1 before I take profit. And if it does break to the low side, which is prime motivation for taking this trade, I've got to say, but I've got to take all risk off the table here. So I'll be taking 12 pips of profit, and I'll be moving my stops 12 pips from entry at that point. So half off here, move the stops 12 points from entry, which will probably be around about the top of that bar, and 50% off the table. So the very worst thing that can happen if we do make this level is we'll have a break-even trade. The very desirable thing would be that we go down to here, which is where I would definitely be taking everything off the table, or that's at 71 cents, right? Everything off the table, or leaving just the tiniest bit in case it broke short. So there you go, mate. That's a trade idea for those who are interested. Aussie
Great.
yen on the 30-minute chart.
Great, mate. Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, let's call it a day then, and we will come back to trading again tomorrow. Same trade time, same channel, and see how things did develop. Which I think we're both on the same page. Market's very quiet this morning, so there might not be anything today, but we'll see.
If that pound news is bad, we might even have a decent result here on the pound breakout trade.
Yes, absolutely.
That'd be welcome.
Yes.
Gotta say.
Yes.
All right, mate.
Great. All right, buddy.
Catch you tomorrow.
Catch you tomorrow. See you soon, guys. See you in the morning.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.